Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I just got back with Josh Owens from the standoff in Bunkerville, Nevada with the Bundy Ranch and the BLM, who basically turned the area into martial law after a 20-year dispute over what could legally be done there, over a 20-year dispute about trying to shut the ranchers completely out of the area that they had enjoyed for generations, asserting that it was for the behalf of the desert tortoise. That was an obvious pretense. At the same time, they're mounting a multi-million-dollar operation, a militarized operation against this family. They're allowing turtles. They're actually not allowing. They are euthanizing turtles under their care, more than 1,400 turtles under their care. And, of course, they were able to drive out 52 of the 53 ranchers in that area with their regulations, coming in and saying, you are now only going to be allowed to have 10% of the stock that you used to have before, and you're not going to be able to put your stock on the land in the prime part of the season. That's the incrementalism. That's the way through regulation and these unelected bureaucracies, they can regulate any business out of business. That's what they're doing with Obamacare. It's essentially the same thing, coming in and declaring that they have the right to assume new powers that are not in the Constitution. The 9th and 10th Amendment say if it's not explicitly in there, you don't have that right. They don't have the right to force people to buy Obamacare, to buy insurance, to spend much more than they ever would on an insurance policy, forcing single men to buy maternity policies so that they can transfer excessive amounts of money to the insurance companies that gave them money to run for office. So what we're seeing here is crony capitalism. When we reported this was really the thing, I believe, that drive this dramatic turnaround that we saw between Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, and early Friday morning. By Friday morning, the sheriff was there with a BLM press release in hand saying, we're going to open up the land again for your cattle. Of course, they had his cattle. A lot of his cattle they had already seized, and they were subsequently taken back. But listen to this article that came out today from the Washington Times. They said, it was likely that pressure from upstairs, that would be Harry Reid, rather than weapons from the field, that changed his mind on the matter. Who is he that changed his mind? That would be the director of the BLM, the guy who used to be Harry Reid's senior policy advisor, Neil Corns. He is now the head of the BLM. That's right. The guy who used to work for Harry Reid is head of the BLM, and they were specifically targeting the Bundy Ranch, and Kit Daniels found that documentation, specifically targeting them as mitigation area, like a carbon tax credit, so that they could go ahead with their solar projects. And they are going ahead with First Solar. The Chinese project was presumably shelved back in June, but Harry Reid has resuscitated that project before in the past. It's not to say that it is completely dead. I've got on the phone right now Dr. Jerome Corsi, and at WND, he wrote an article about where the Chinese are going with this. They're not just in that one area with Harry Reid. This is massive. This is across the country. Dr. Corsi, thank you for joining us.
A great pleasure. Thank you.
Now, in April, in your article, you say that Bloomberg reported that a Chinese billionaire who was the founder of ENN, the energy group that wanted to put this solar project there, had teamed up with Harry Reid to get incentives, including land that was 113 miles south of Las Vegas, and they sought to buy $4.5 million, less than 1/8 of the land's $38 million assessed value. So they're getting it for 1/8 of the price. These are sweetheart deals. These are being done all over the country. There is a plan to establish Chinese ownership and even Chinese factories and towns on the ground here in the U.S., isn't there?
Well, yes, I've been writing about this now for several years. I mean, especially under the Obama administration, it's really picked up. The Chinese, working largely with Harry Reid, have had these plans to put massive solar facilities, actually to buy energy, period, in the United States. I mean, under the George W. Bush administration, you've got to remember that the Chinese were prohibited from buying interests in ports because it was viewed to be not in our national security interest to allow major energy or transportation facilities to be owned by the Chinese. Well, the Obama administration's reversed that. Of course, we've continued to borrow $1 trillion from the Chinese, and the interest on that alone is mounting daily. And the Obama administration shows no end of interest in running deficits and borrowing from the Chinese. So here runs Harry Reid in 2011 with a group of senators on a Senate-funded trip to China. And Harry Reid comes back with this partnership with ENN Energy, ENN Group, which is one of the largest energy companies in China, 100% owned by the Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese government, yeah.
Chinese government, and partnering with the ENN to shut down coal plants in Nevada and to bring ENN into running 8,000 or 9,000 acres of solar farms. Because you got to remember, one of the problems with solar energy is it takes huge amounts of land. And having all this land used for solar power funded by the Chinese, you of course got to throw ranchers off their land, and you have to exclude any coal-powered plants, which are cheaper and more effective.
Of course, they had rights, just like property owners have rights, and they've got to somehow get them off of the land before they can turn an area over to a developer to build a skyscraper in a city. It was the same sort of thing that was happening here with these ranchers.
And I think the showdown ended when it became clear that, I mean, you were reporting it at InfoWorld, we're reporting it at WND.com. The Harry Reid connection here is Harry Reid is about as corrupt as they come.
Yes.
He's put his son in as lawyer for ENN Group. He's pressured EN Energy, which is a utility providing electricity in Nevada, to take more energy from renewable sources than is economically reasonable to do. And NV Energy refused. That's why the original Chinese plan to buy these 9,000 acres has failed, at least failed this round. Harry Reid will revive it again. Harry Reid never gives up on these plans.
That's right. That's right.
Chinese. Just because the Bundy Ranch won today doesn't mean BLM is going away. I mean, this guy, Corns, who has been appointed heading at the BLM, was formerly a top advisor to Harry Reid, has spent the last few years in BLM doing the 6-state study in the Southwest of how to convert huge areas of the Southwest to solar farms. And again, they're not worried in moving the endangered species to another habitat, which they call mitigation of the effects. The environmentalists are happy to do that if it's to build a solar farm owned by the Chinese. They just won't move this tortoise if it's to the benefit of a rancher who wants to graze cattle.
That's right. They've done that over and over again all around the area of Las Vegas. They've moved tortoises out. They got money from developers there and said, that's fine, you pay us money. We don't really care about the tortoises.
Yeah, the tortoises are just a chip in the game.
That's right.
The left and the environmentalists don't care about the tortoises. It's just a way of using the BLM and the EPA to impose this ideological agenda against carbon fuels, which is absolutely an irrational agenda. I mean, it's, again, you see it in the hysteria over the UN's Climate Commission coming out again and saying all these disastrous consequences are going to happen because we burn carbon-based fuels. Carbon-based fuels are perfectly natural. They're a product of the earth. They can be burned in a clean fashion. They have nothing to do with dinosaurs, more lies. But the left, the Democratic Party, and the radical core of the Democratic Party, Al Gore through Harry Reid, have found a way to make billions of dollars personally, millions, by scamming the American people into this climate hysteria, thinking the carbon fuels are bad. In the meantime, inviting the Chinese to come in here and build billions of dollars, taking land away from ranchers in order to let the Chinese run solar energy farms, which are not productive, not economically competitive with hydrocarbon-based fuels. But yet in the ideological agenda of the Democrats, they believe they can sell this lie to a dummy-down American public that doesn't know the difference and will be scared by climate hysteria. The world's going to end if we burn coal. Well, no, it's not. But yet in Harry Reid's agenda, that narrative is important for Harry Reid and his Democratic crony, corrupted buddies in Congress to become millionaires and billionaires just like Al Gore did.
Exactly. It's not just about China. Now, as you pointed out, WND has reliable information that the Bank of China has continued to advance plans to convert China's holdings of U.S. debt into equity. That's what we see happening with China. But of course, it's not just even with China. This is crony capitalism. This is where giant corporations come in, buy special favors, get the government to run out by regulation all of the small businesses. We've seen this pattern happen over and over again in many different industries. But what's happening here is that Harry Reid has put his minion, the guy who used to be a senior policy advisor to him, in as head of the Bureau of Land Management, which they now see, I guess, as the Bureau of Land Ownership. And they are now trading these mineral rights that they find throughout all this property, the water rights, the surface rights. They're trading those all off to their giant corporations, and of course then getting massive campaign contributions from those same corporations. That was what caused them to back down, was shining the light on these cockroaches, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, I'm sure it was Harry Reid that caused the back down. Harry Reid wanted this.
That's right.
Being brought to light. I mean, but look, the Democrats, the corruption within the Obama administration is enormous when it comes to energy. Again, remember, it was all these cylinders, these,
right, $500 million
that were funded by Obama in the stimulus bill, all went to bundlers, Obama supporters and funders. Money slipped under the table, campaign contributions to Democrats. And what happened is that all these solar panel Democrat-funded firms went bankrupt because the Chinese undercut them in producing solar panels on the world market.
That's right.
Which was inevitable.
This is an article from January 20th, 2013, a little over a year ago. He said, China poised to play the debt card for U.S. land. We've seen how that plays out in places like Nevada, where we shined the spotlight on the dirty dealings of Harry Reid, and they backed down. That's not us saying that. That's the Americans Against the Tea Party saying that. They said it was likely pressure from upstairs, in other words, Harry Reid, rather than weapons from the field that changed his mind on the matter. And, of course, the person who made that declaration, who backed them down, was the very head of the BLM, Harry Reid's former minion, still his minion, but his former senior policy advisor. That would be Neil Corns, who is now the head of the BLM. But we wanted Dr. Jerome Corsi to get on and flesh this out for us, because this is a project. It's not for sure that they are not going to come back and get involved in this project, but we also have seen First Solar breaking ground. And this was also involving the Bundy Ranch, because they saw the Bundy Ranch in the Gold Butte area where their cows were grazing as a quote-unquote mitigation area, essentially a carbon credit, if you will. Keeping that area pristine, getting the cattle off, abrogating his rights so they could move ahead with these projects. They all referenced this particular ranch, this rancher who's the last man standing for 20 years. They needed to get his rights, his grazing rights, his water rights out of the way so they could move ahead with these crony capitalist projects. One of them is going. The other ones will be going as well. They have many projects there, but it's all over the country. Dr. Jerome Corsi, we were just talking about what's going on with China, this debt card where we're transferring control of U.S. land, U.S. assets, and the BLM is a major part of that.
Well, that's right. I mean, this entire green energy scam, and that's really what it is. I mean, for decades now, the far left has tried to push this agenda on America in its antipathy to carbon fuels, thinking we're going to destroy the world if carbon fuels are burned, which is nonsense. Or the fossil fuels, they're not fossil fuels. They're naturally produced by the earth on an ongoing basis, been burned for thousands of years, and we're still here. But yet, if you can get solar panels, you can accomplish several goals the far left wants to do. It can take an Agenda 21 grab of getting any independent ranchers off of land. It can move the Chinese in, which, of course, the Democratic politicians are happy to receive campaign contributions and kickbacks. Remember, goes back to Clinton and all of his Chinese buddies, and Al Gore being funded under the table.
Johnny Wong.
So now you've got Harry Reid playing the game, and Harry Reid in Nevada has been waging a war since about 2005 against any carbon-producing power plants, which are cheaper, more efficient, better for the consumer in Nevada. Harry Reid's closed down any number of them. In fact, one of the Mojave generating coal plants that Harry Reid wants to use for this Chinese land grab near Lofton, Nevada, was where one of the Mojave generating stations was located since 1965. They destroyed that plant, coal-producing plant. Now they're going to move in the Chinese solar panels. Well, the Chinese undercut effort number one by the Obama corrupt gang, which was Solyndra and the other bogus solar corporations that were funded with billions of dollars in stimulus money, went bankrupt when the Chinese inevitably produced cheaper solar panels on the international market. Now the Chinese want to come into the United States and dominate, the energy market with, again, the scam of taking huge quantities, because it takes massive amounts of land for these solar plants to be able to produce energy. And then they don't work because even in Nevada, the sun doesn't shine all the time. They're highly inefficient. Country after country around the world has shown that they cost more to produce, these solar and wind facilities online with backup hydro power generation when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. It's all a scam, but Harry Rich can get rich at it. Harry Reid can make sure he lines his pocket. Al Gore became a billionaire on this nonsense. And the left has an ideological agenda, which, again, goes back to the left even wanting to control this whole carbon tax scheme that they were going to impose on us until all the fraudulent emails got disclosed from the EU showing the climate science underlying all this renewable energy nonsense is largely fabricated junk science made up by fraudulent scientists and universities, left-oriented, often paid to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jerome Corsi, for exposing the light on these plans, on the graft and corruption that we see happening here. This is across the country, and people need to wake up to it. It makes a difference. It backed them down. Thank you so much for reporting on what's going on with the Chinese and Harry Reid. That's Dr. Jerome Corsi, WND.